Today we're looking at the all-terrain Scout Transport, but join me today to see which one's going to be Mando's best.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Mando number 5.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to my channel Mando number 5, and I'm Keith Guppy. So welcome to episode number 3 of Mando's Best, where I look at the vehicles, the ships and some of the characters of the modern Star Wars collecting lines from 1995. So this week, ladies and gentlemen, we're looking at the AT-ST, the all-terrain armoured transport, which has been released an amazing 11 times since 1995. About half of those have been battle packs and half of those have been single AT-ST with maybe a pilot or an extra figure. Now, there are two versions. There's the original version, which he brought out from in 1995, the Power of the Force, which was basically the same mold as the classic vintage version. And then later on, a few years later, they brought out the bigger versions, which were a lot higher and more true to scale. Probably not quite as big as they should be, but they were a much better scale to the 3.75 inch figures. So as always, ladies and gentlemen, let's look at each AT-ST in a lot of detail, and let's score them based on a number of categories out of 10. We're going to look at features, playability, the box art, the presentation of the box. That's really important to me because I'm an in-box collector. We'll look at the size of them, the scale of them compared with 3.75 inch figures. And we'll look at the rarity, how difficult are they to get hold of these days. And we'll look at the value for every pound you spend. But as always, please put your comments in. I'm sure some of you won't agree with my selection, so I'd love to hear from you. So this is where it started in 1995, ladies and gentlemen, with the Power of the Force AT-ST. This is a UKG graded 85 version. Yeah, but it was a direct recasted mold from the original vintage version in the classic orange box. Now this box did come out in two different versions. One is a sort of landscape like we got here now, but they did do a portrait version as well. But you know, it had the guns the same as the vintage one. It had the moving legs. But yeah, pretty basic. You'd have to spend about £45 to get this version now on eBay. Then in 2001, you had this lovely looking set, and it was one of the early battle packs, really, where you had the same sort of version of the AT-ST, but you had a pack-in. You had Paplu on his speeder bike, which is really cool. It's got a lovely presentation box. There's Paplu a bit closer up. But really nice. You had some nice weathering on the base of the AT-ST. You've got a window in the top where you can look inside. Classic photograph on the sides. And there's the AT-ST with the at least they made an effort and weathered the feet on this version. So, not too bad. And the presentation box really makes it. You'd have to spend about £70 now if you wanted to get this version. So, considering it's got the speeder bike, it's not too expensive. Then in 2007, with the 30th anniversary collection, Hasbro really went for it, and they produced some really gorgeous battle packs. This is the Battle of Endor from the Ultimate Battle Pack. Now, although it's the original version of the AT-ST with the stomping legs, not the bigger version they produced later on, it's got loads of features. It's got speeder bikes, it's got 2 Ewoks, there's one chucking spears, it's got logs, tree logs, it's got Stormtrooper, Biker Scout, another Biker Scout, so that's another speeder bike. What an amazing set. Now, I'm drawn to this because it's graded and it looks absolutely smart in this graded box. But loads of the artwork, look at the artwork in the background. It's a really lovely presentation box. So, I think, if I had the chance to buy this now and I hadn't got it, I would definitely be looking out for it. Loads of features, as I said. They did 2 of these, the Endor one and then the Hoth one, which I'll show you in a minute. So you had Uchi and Wicket W Warwick in the set, but a great looking set. Really nice, back from 2007. And I think this is the last version they did of this scale. From then onwards, they upgraded them to the larger versions. And this would cost you probably up to £160 on eBay right now. And then the second set they did for the 30th anniversary collection was this one, the Hoth Battle Set, the Battle of Hoth Ultimate Battle Pack. what an amazing set again. This one again is graded UKG 90. It's got a turret gun in there, laser turret. It's got 3 snow troopers, two rebel soldiers, Han Solo, the original small AT-ST, just like the Endor one. But what an absolutely lovely pack again. These things are absolutely huge and really difficult to get in this condition, which is why I got it graded. Look at that. You've got the AT-ST exploding, the AT-AT exploding in the background. And then you can see all of it, all the stuff you get on the background. You get an AT-ST driver as well. Really, really nice set. And they simply just didn't produce any of these. Now I wish they did. It looks absolutely smart. Look at I think you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 or 8 figures in this set. So really, really nice. Looks great in this display. Look at the ATs on the side as well. But a lovely, lovely set. And like the Endor one, this would probably cost you as much as £160 to buy now ungraded. And in 2009, with the Red Legacy line, everything changed and this beast was launched. A new, improved, scaled up AT-ST. This one had an AT-ST driver in the background. It had choices of guns on the front. It was a bigger scale. It had twin seating. So a massive upgrade from the original smaller version. There you go. Look at the back. So yeah, it had 2 seats, as you can see there. It was just a much better version all the way around. And this is the version they've kept ever since. But really, really nice. It's got some reasonable weathering on it as well. But this was repeated again with the Black Series. And this has probably cost you about £80 if you want to get it now. So in 2010, you had yet another battle pack. Slightly small version this time. But you had the AT-ST, the new improved version. It came with 2 snowtroopers, an AT-ST commander or driver, but this time it came with an E-Web cannon, which is a bit different. But again, a very big box. The classic dark sky, blue skies line front with the clone trooper on it. One of these now would probably cost you in the region of about £75. They did 2 battle packs like this. They did one with a turret, and that's a lot more expensive, harder to get. But there you see the E-Web cannon, which actually fires a missile, but it's a bigger version, as I said earlier on. And pretty easy to get this one, but still quite a nice battle pack. Then in 2014 they launched this battle pack, and this is probably my favourite. It's from the Black Series, the Toys R Us exclusive. Very, very, very difficult to get hold of, especially in good condition. I mean, it came with 7 figures. It was the bigger scale version. It came with a Stormtrooper, Chewbacca, Princess Leia, Han Solo, and I think it was Paploo. But yeah, I mean, you had the classic on the back. You had Han Solo pretending to surrender scene with Chewbacca, with the classic blue line down the side from the 2014 version. But really, really difficult to get hold of. As I said, a Toys R Us exclusive back in the day. This would probably cost you somewhere in a region of 150, maybe even £180 if you want to get them. They just don't come up. You hardly ever see them, but a real massive piece. And again, really difficult to get in good condition. And they were, very hard to get from Toys R Us only. Then you had the first of the 3 TVC versions released in 2012. And this is obviously, again, the bigger version. The box art's lovely. You've got the classic racetrack. You've got Darth Vader, Stormtrooper, a couple of Ewoks. Unfortunately, none of these figures were included in the set. You just had the basic, bigger AT-ST. But the box art's really, really cool. And this, like I said, this was a TVC1 launch back in 2012. This one now would probably cost you in the region of about £100 on eBay. So, quite expensive. Then in 2019, you had this one, the AT-ST Raider from the Mandalorian series. And with it, you do get a figure. You get a free Katonian Raider, which at the time was pretty unique. But you've got a cargo net underneath the AT-ST body. You've got the unique markings on the legs, which is really cool, on the body, which for me makes it one of my favorites. Yeah, so this was launched in 2019, and probably now, if you want to buy this now, you probably have to spend only about £80. So for me, it's pretty good value, and it's a really unique color artwork on it, and obviously the classic, the bigger size version of the AT-ST. Then in 2023, you had the last of the free vintage collection AT-STs. This is part of the 40th anniversary of Return of the Jedi, and this included the Chewbacca figure, which was loose, and it was obviously the bigger version of the AT-ST, but the classic racetrack style, really good looking box. It's got part of an Endor battle scene pictured on the top of the box, but a really, really cool AT-ST. And this is quite sought after. Although it was only released a little while ago, this is now, you'd have to spend about £120 to get this on eBay now, because, it's really sought after. And I think it's probably the classic box art with Chewbacca on the top of the AT-ST. So let's look at the scores that I've given all those lovely AT-STs. And like I said, the scores are out of 10, and they cover the features, playability, box art, presentation, size, look, scale, rarity, and value for money. So let's start with the Power of the Force AT-ST on features and playability. So yeah, it doesn't do a lot really. It's basically the original version from the original vintage AT-ST launched back in sort of 82, 83. So I've given that a 6. Then you had the Power of the Jedi version. Features, playability, well, it has got a Paploo and a speeder bike in it, so that gives an extra mark. But again, you are talking about the original mold, so a little bit limited. Then in terms of features and playability, you've got the 2 stars of the show. You've got the Ultimate Battle Packs, the Hoth one and the Endor one. And they are amazing. They've got so many features, so much going on, loads of figures. So even though they are the smaller versions of the AT-ST, I've given them both a 9. And then you've got the Legacy one. Although that is a bigger version, there ain't much going on. I've only given that a 6. And then you've got the other Hoth Blue Skies sort of battle pack, which has got the web cannon and the 3 figures, and I've given that a 7. Then in terms of the Black Series battle pack, Battle on Endor, well, again, that's got loads going on. There's 5 or 6 figures. It's a full size AT-ST, as you can see. So I've given that a good 8. Then you've got the next Black Series one, which was produced a lot later on. I've given that a 7. It is what it is. It's a bigger version. But apart from that, it's got an AT-ST driver, which you can see in the front of the packaging, which is good. But I've given that a 7. And then you've got the 2 TVC versions. You've got the first one launched. I've given that a 6. There's no figures or anything with it. I've given the next one, the AT-ST Raider, a 7, because you do get the Clitonian Warrior, which is really cool. And I've given the one with Chewbacca, which was launched very recently. I've given that a 7 because you do get Chewbacca. And then we go on to the box art. Going back to Power of Force, that's it doesn't really do a lot to me. That orange stripe, I know it's a little bit iconic, but I've given that a 5. I like the presentation in the Power of the Jedi one. You can see all the way around. It's a nice hexagon sort of shaped box. Quite nice. So I've given that a 7. And again, the 2 Ultimate Battle Packs, I've given them a really high score of 8. I mean, the presentation box looks lovely. I mean, mine in the acrylic cases looks, top notch. So I've given them a really high 8. The Legacy version, it looks okay. The figure is quite far back in the box because you can't really see it. I've given that a 6. And I've also given a 6 to the Hoth Blue Skies battle set. In terms of the Black Series battle set, I've given that a battle pack, or whatever you want to call it. I've given that a really high 8. It looks really cool. You've got the trees in the background. You have got a bunker, but the bunker is just made of sort of cardboard. But you've got all the figures in there. It looks really, really cool. I've given that an 8. And I've given the Black Series one that was released a lot later, a 7. Then I've given the first release Scout Walker and the Raider both 7s. They've got a lovely racetrack design, all of these, so they get a 7. And I think the latest one with the offer sticker, which harks back to TVC 1 line and the original vintage stuff, I think that looks pretty cool. So I've just given that a slightly higher score of an 8. Then looking at size, look, 3.75 inch compatibility. Unfortunately, the Power of the Force one just gets a 5 because it's a smaller version, and so does the Power of the Jedi. It has got some dirty weathered feet, so it gets a little bit of a higher grade. So that gets a 6. And then both the battle packs, the Ultimate Battle Packs from the 30th anniversary, get a 7. They are the original size AT-STs after all, so only get a 7, which means the Legacy one will get an 8 because that's a bigger version, and the Hoth set will get a 7. Then moving on to the look of the Black Series 1 battle set, I've given that an 8. It is a bigger version. I've given 8 to the other Black Series 1 because they are the bigger versions. And then I've given the TVC first one a 7. It's a bit boring. It's a 7. I've given the one that you've got, the AT-ST Raider, because of the feet and the look of it, I've given that an 8. And I've given the latest release a 7. Then you look at rarity. So the Power of Force one, that's quite common. The box I show on here, which is the portrait box, is a bit rarer than the landscape one. But based on the landscape one I've got here, it's a 5. The Power of the Jedi one, quite hard to get hold of. If you go on eBay now, you probably see 2 or 3. I'll give that a 7. The Ultimate Battle Packs are quite rare, both given a 7. The Legacy one and the Blue Skies ones are probably a little bit more common. I've given those a 6. Then in terms of this Battle of Endor set, the Black Series one, I've given that a whopping 10. Now that is a really, really hard set to get. Very hard, in good condition, with no dings or dents like this one is. That's very, very hard. I've given that a whopping 10. The next Black Series one's a bit more common, a 7. And then the TVC ones, I've given the original one a 7. I've given the Raider a 6. And I've given the latest one a 6. That could have been a 7 because it's pretty harder to get hold of the original 2. And then finally, you've got the value for money. So I'm here, you can see on the top, I've got the values on across the top. So I'm looking at the value versus the other scores. So for 45 quid, you do get an AT-ST. It's the cheapest one you can get, so I've given that an 8. And even though the Power of the Jedi one is 70 quid, you do get Paploo and the speeder bike, so I've given that an 8 as well. Then you've got the 2 Ultimate Battle Packs. They are £160, but look what you get with them. You get so much with them. You get half a dozen figures. You get a turret gun or speeder bikes or bits and pieces, forest trunks and things like that. So even though they're expensive, I think they're pretty good value for money. So I've given them both an 8 as well. Then we move on to the Legacy red version. You just get the AT-ST and a driver. I've only given that a 6. But with the Blue Skies line, you get the E-Web cannon and you get the 3 figures, and it's only 75 quid. So that's a pretty good deal for me. So I've given that a 7. Then in terms of what you get for the Black Series one, the Battle on Endor, you get a few figures and you get the AT-ST, but you don't get a proper bunker or anything like that, and it's very, very expensive. So I've given that a 6. And the Black Series one, I've given that a 7. And then the 3 TVC ones, I've given them nearly the same scores. I've given the £100 one a 7. I've given the £80 one Radar an 8 because you do get the figure, and I think it's really, really cool. And then I've only given the last one, even though it's got a Chewbacca, it is £120. So I've given that a 7. So they're the scores, and let's see where they rank from 0 to 11. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's look at the final scores on the doors. So, as I said, there were 11 of these AT-STs and some in battle packs. Now, you might think it's a little bit unfair to look at something like that compared with that, but it is an AT-ST at the end of the day. So let's have a look at them. So at number 11, coming at last place, I'm afraid it is the Power Force version. It's the old version. It's too small. Obviously, it walks, and that's about it, really. So I've given that 29 points. Then next, and a lot of these are very, very close. There's not much in them. I've given 10th place to the Legacy Red version from, I think, 2002. That gets 32 points. It's a nice display box. You've got one AT-ST driver, but he's quite hidden in the box. So for me, it's a little bit not quite as good as the Black Series we'll see later on. Next, you've got the Blue Skies line, sort of the Attack on Hoth Battle Set. That scores 33 points. Got a couple of Stormtroopers, AT-ST driver, and it's got the E-Web cannon. So it's a pretty good set. And then next, you've got the TVC 2023, the latest release version with the Chewbacca. That scores 33 points, in my opinion. Then you've got the TVC 2012, the original version, and that scores 34 points. And then you've got the Power of the Jedi version with Patplu on the speeder bike in a lovely display case that wraps around it. But it is the old version again, so that scores 35 points. Then, for me, my favourite TVC is a TVC Raider from 2019 and from The Mandalorian. It's got some lovely artwork on the legs and the body, so that gets 36 points for me. Then the Black Series 2017, which is quite similar to the Legacy, but just looks a bit better in there. I love the red and black boxes. That scores 36 points. Then in joint second and third place, you've got the absolutely huge 30th anniversary battle packs, and they've got so many features and so much stuff in them. They come really highly. Now, they didn't win because they are still got the small AT-ST, but ultimately, you know, they are pretty big and pretty cool, and they look great in acrylic, which is probably why I like them so much, which is a bit of a cheat, really. But there you go. That's second and third place. But my number one is the Black Series set, the Battle of Endor from 2014. It's just really, really rare. It was a Toys R Us exclusive, as you can see. Not many produced. So that for me is my number one of this week. So there you go, the AT-ST. I hope you enjoyed it. And I'll be back soon, hopefully next week, with another episode of Mando's Best. See you soon. Bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Mando number 5.